Hi, Alice Zhao from Maven Analytics here. In this video, we'll be working on a beginner SQL project to analyze restaurant order data that's stored in a MySQL database. We're going to start off by writing SQL queries to explore an orders table and a menu table individually, and then bring them together at the end using joins to better understand customer behavior. Now, this project is a part of our Maven Analytics guided project library, where you can build, apply, and sharpen your skills by solving real business problems. You can work through these totally independently, you can view hints, or you can watch our expert-led solution videos to see how data professionals would solve these problems step by step. Now with that, let's dive into the assignment details for our restaurant order analysis in SQL. Let's kick things off by going over the project brief. Here's our situation. You've just been hired as a data analyst for the Taste of the World Cafe, which is a restaurant that has diverse menu offerings and serves generous portions. Your assignment? The Taste of the World Cafe has just debuted a new menu at the start of the year, and you've been asked to dig into the customer data to see which menu items are doing well versus which are not, and also what the top customers seem to like best. Your objectives? You'll be digging into two tables. One of them is called menu items, and the other is called order details. Your first objective will be to explore the menu items table to get an idea of what's going on with the new menu. Then you'll explore the order details table to get an idea of the data that's been collected on all the customer transactions. And finally, you'll use both tables together to better understand how customers are reacting to the new menu. Now, if you'd like to follow along with me, you can either create a free account at mavenanalytics.io to access our data projects, or you can head over to our free data playground, search for the restaurant order data, and click download to access the same data set that I'll be using for this project. You'll see two download options, SQL and CSV. If you're using MySQL specifically, go ahead and click the SQL option, and I'll be walking through how to load the data into MySQL. If you're using a different database or tool such as SQL Server, Postgres, SQLite, and so on, you can click the CSV option, which will allow you to download a CSV version of the data for you to then import into your database tool of choice. Now for the rest of the video, what I'm going to do is introduce each of the three core objectives along with the associated tasks, and then I'm going to walk through my solution videos. Now, I highly encourage you to pause the videos and work through the tasks on your own, since that's truly the best way to learn, to really struggle through the problems on your own. But if you ever get stuck, feel free to jump back into the video and watch me as I go through my solutions step by step. Good luck! Let's dive into our first objective, which is to explore the items table. Within the items table, the first thing you're going to want to do is just view the items table and write a query to find the number of items on the menu. Once you do that, you're going to want to look at the least and most expensive items on the menu, and then specifically dig into the Italian dishes. How many Italian dishes are on the menu, and what are the least and most expensive Italian dishes? Finally, you'll take a look at how many dishes are in each category and what the average dish price is within each category. Now, to answer these questions, the first thing I'm going to do is open up MySQL Workbench. Now from here, I can go to MySQL Connections, click the plus sign, and then I'm going to name this new connection Restaurant DB. Now I can click on Restaurant DB, and from here, I need to load in some data. So to do that, I'm going to go up to File, Open SQL Script, and I'm going to open up the create SQLDB.SQL file. So if I double click that, you can see all this code here. It's going to create my database. So to run it, I can click on this little lightning bolt here, and you can see down here, there are all these green check marks, which means that my data has been loaded properly. Now, if I go on the left here, I can click this refresh button, and now I see that there's this Restaurant DB. So if I expand that, I can see within Restaurant DB, there are two tables, menu items and order details. So let's start by exploring this menu items table for objective 1. So now I'm going to go to the Query 1 tab. And the first thing that I'm going to do is say that I want to use this restaurant database right here. So I'm going to do use restaurant DB, and then I can do Command Shift Enter to run that. And you can see down here, it says use restaurant DB has been successful. So now I can start looking at the tables within restaurant DB. Okay, so these are the 7 questions that we're going to answer within objective 1. The first thing we want to do is view the menu items table. Whenever I start looking at a database, the first thing I always do is just a select statement. So I'm going to do a select all from menu items. And then again, I'm doing Command Shift Enter. And you can see here is my output. So you can see that here I have all my menu items. Here are their IDs, the item names, the categories, which seem to be American, Asian, and so on, and prices. Okay, so from here, I have a pretty good idea of what's in the menu items table. It's listing all the items that are on this menu. That makes sense. Next, let's find the number of items on this menu. Now to do this, I can take the select statement, copy it down here, and the only thing I'm going to change is changing this part to a count. So if I do that, and I do Command Shift Enter again, you can see right here I have 32 rows in this table. Great, this is a pretty manageable amount. Now from here, my next question is what are the least and most expensive items on the menu? Now to find this, I always like to just view my table one more time. So I can also click this little lightning here if I don't want to do the Command Shift Enter shortcut. And from here, to find the least and most expensive items on the menu, I'm going to have to look at this price column. So let's do select all from menu items. And then I'm going to look at the price column. So to find the least and most expensive items, I'm going to do some sorting, which in SQL is an order by. So I'm going to say order by price. And if I run this, then you see I have the lowest to the highest price. So it looks like my least expensive item is edamame, that is $5. And then if I want to find the most expensive item, I can do the same thing, but I'm going to say descending. And if I run this, then you see my most expensive item is the shrimp scampi, which is $19.95. Okay, so those are my least and most expensive items on the menu. Now let's look at how many Italian dishes are on the menu. Okay, so to do that, to find how many dishes are on the menu total, before I did that select count from menu items. And then if I specifically want to look at Italian dishes, I can filter my data. So I'm going to do a where, and then I can say category equals Italian. And if I run that, then you see there are 9 Italian dishes. And to find the least and most expensive Italian dishes on the menu, I can do my order by that I did above and combine it with my where statement here. So I'm going to do select all from menu items. And then specifically, I'm looking at Italian food. And I want to order by price. So if I run all that, then you see I have only Italian dishes, and the least expensive is spaghetti, which is $14.50. And then to find the most expensive, I can do that same thing, but then write a descending here so that it orders by greatest to lowest. And then you see shrimp scampi is my most expensive item. Okay, now I want to know how many dishes are in each category. So to do this, I'm just going to look at my table one more time. I'm going to run this select statement, and you see I have categories, and then I have all these menu items here. So to find the number of dishes in each category, I'm going to have to do a group by. So I'm going to do select all from menu items. And then I want to know the number of dishes in each category. So I'm going to have to aggregate this by category. So I'm going to do a group by category. And then whenever I do a group by, whatever I put in my group by has to also be in the select statement. So I'm going to put category here. And then also when I do this group by, I have to decide how I want to aggregate all of these rows. So for each category, I want to know how many dishes there are. So in other words, how many rows there are here within the category. So I'm going to do a count, and I can count any field here. So I'm going to choose to count menu item ID. So I'm going to say menu item ID, and then I'm going to name this as num dishes. And then I'm going to run this code. So this is going to tell me for each category how many menu items are there, and that's going to be called the number of dishes. So if I select all that and run it, you can see here for each category, here are my number of dishes. Now a variation on that is I want to know the average dish price within each category. So to do that, I can take this query right here, and instead of saying the number of dishes within each category, I want to look at the average dish price. So instead of saying number of dishes, I'm going to call this average price. And instead of a count, I'm going to find the average. And instead of menu item ID, I want the average price. So if I run all this, you can see here for each category, this is my average dish price. And you can see that Italian dishes are the most expensive versus American dishes are the most affordable. And with that, we've been able to pretty thoroughly explore this menu items table. So just a reminder, if I run this again, here is my menu items table. We now understand the number of rows in this table, the different categories in this table, and the different prices for each category. For Objective 2, we're going to be exploring the orders table. First, you're going to want to view the order details table and find the date range of the table. Then you want to see how many orders were made in the date range, as well as how many items were ordered within the date range. Next, you want to see which orders had the most number of items, and finally, find the number of orders that had more than 12 items. Let's dive in. To continue on with our analysis, I'm going to open up a new query tab. So I'm going to go to File, New Query tab, and then from here, I can start writing my SQL queries again. So I'm going to paste in these questions that we're going to answer for Objective 2. Now for this objective, our goal is to explore the order details table. So the first thing we're going to do is a select all from order details. And I can do a Command-Shift-Enter, and that's going to show me all these details for the order details table. So I have order details ID, an order ID, this date field, a time field, and an item ID field. Okay, so what does this really mean? Well, it looks like for each order, so order ID, so let's look at order 1. It looks like one item was bought in that order, so order ID 1, the item ID 109 was bought. Okay, great. And then for order ID 2, that spans 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows, and it looks like these 5 items were ordered for that specific order ID. Okay, that makes sense. And then on the left here, it looks like this is the primary key of our table, or in other words, the unique identifier of our table. So every row here in this table is going to have a unique ID. Okay, so we have a general idea of what's happening with this table. Now let's dig into it further with some of these questions here. So our first question is, what's the date range of this table? So to figure that out, I'm going to do a select all from order details. And then I'm going to order by order date. And if I do a Command-Shift-Enter, you can see that my lowest order date is January 1st, 2023. Now, another way to look at the date range of the table is to do a select min. So I can do select min order date, and I see that value right there. So I'm going to do a tab to autocomplete the rest. And if I do min order date, if I run this with Command-Shift-Enter, then you see this is my minimum order date. And then I can also do max order date here within the same query, and that will give me the full date range of my table. So my table has order information in it from January 1st, 2023, all the way to March 31st, 2023. And I would say that's a simpler way that you can find the date range of your table. So using min and max instead of using an order by. Okay, the next question is how many orders were made within this date range? Okay, so to answer this question, let's look back at our full table here. So you can see we had all these fields here, and one of them was order ID. And so we have order ID 1, but then 2 is repeated across multiple rows. So to find the number of orders, I can't just count the number of rows in this table. I have to find the number of unique orders that were made. So to do this, I can use the distinct keyword. So I'm going to do select, and then I want to know how many orders were made. So I'm going to do count distinct, And that's going to give me the unique number of values. So I'm going to do count distinct of order ID to give me the number of unique order IDs from the order details table. And if I run this, you can see that there were 5,370 unique orders that were made. Now the next question is how many items were ordered within this date range. So this is different than the number of orders because if we look at our order details table again, you can see that for each order, multiple items were purchased. So to find the number of items that were ordered, instead of doing a count distinct, I can just look at the number of rows that are in this table because that will give me all the items that were ordered. So I can do select count all from order details. And if I run that, then you can see that there were many more items that were ordered. Okay, so this is giving me an idea of how big this table is. We have 12,000 items that were ordered within this 3-month time frame. Okay, so from here, the next question that we're going to dig into is which orders had the most number of items. To answer this, I always like to go back and look at my full table. Okay, so here's my full table. I want to know which orders had the most number of items. So to do this, I can look at my orders and my items, and I'm going to have to do a group by. So I'm going to have to look at for every order how many items were in there. So let's start with that. I'm going to do select all from order details, and then I'm going to group by order ID because I want to know for each order how many items were there. So whatever I put in my group by, I have to put in my select as well. So I'm going to do order ID, and then how many items were there. To find that, I'm going to have to do a count of item ID, and then I'm going to name that num items. Okay, so let's just start here for now. I'm going to run this code, and you can see for each order ID here, this is the number of items there were. Okay, knowing this, I want to know the number of orders with the most items. So to do this, I'm going to have to sort this num items column. So I can do order by num items, and then I want to start with the most number of items to the least. So I can do descending to sort from highest to lowest. Now if I run all this, you'll see that these orders up here all had a lot of items. So in each order, there were 14 dishes that were ordered. Okay, so my last question is how many orders had more than 12 items? Now to do that, I can modify my previous query. So I'm going to take this query here, and now I'm going to remove this last bit here where I have this order by, and I'm going to change it to a having. So the having clause allows you to filter on aggregations from your group by. So in this case, again, if I just run this part right here, if I run that, you see I have for each order ID the number of items, and this num items is the aggregation that I've just created with my group by. So now I can filter on this column with the having clause. So I'm going to do having, and I'm going to say num items greater than 12. So if I run all this here, now you can see my output has all the orders that had more than 12 items. Okay, but we're not done yet because this is asking how many orders had more than 12 items. Well, this shows all the orders that had more than 12 items, but to find the number of orders that had more than 12 items, we're going to have to write a query around this query. Okay, so stick with me. So right now we have this query right here, which is giving us this output down here. And we want to know how many rows are in this output. So to do that, I can put parentheses around this to make this a subquery, and I'm going to call it num orders. Okay, now from here, I can now treat num orders here as a table. So I can write a select statement using this table. So I'm going to say select count all, because we want to know how many rows are in here. Select count all from this subquery. So I'm going to highlight all this, and if I run it, it's going to tell me there were 20 orders that had more than 12 items. And the way I was able to do that was using this group by and then adding on a having to filter that, and then creating a subquery off of that and writing the count around that subquery to count the number of rows. And that's going to give me the number of orders with more than 12 items. Okay, with this objective, our goal was to explore the order details table, and now you have a pretty good idea of what's in the order details table. You had all these orders and also the items within each order. Now that we understand the order details table, let's move on to the next objective. The third objective is to analyze customer behavior. To do this, we're going to combine the menu items and the order details tables into a single table. From there, you can figure out what the least and most ordered items were, as well as what categories they were in, and then look into the top 5 orders that spent the most money. Finally, you're going to want to view the details of the highest spent order and gather any insights from that. And as a bonus, try viewing the details of the top 5 highest spent orders. And again, gather any insights from that. Let's dive in. For objective 3, we're going to start a new query tab again. And these are the 5 questions that we want to answer for objective 3. So again, our goal for this whole analysis was that we wanted to dig into our customer data to first see which menu items are doing well, and then also see what the top customers seem to like best. So now that we've explored the menu items table and also the order details table, we're going to be able to answer those 2 questions. Okay, so to get started, let's just view our menu items and order details tables one more time. So I'm going to do select all from menu items, and I did a Command-Shift return there, and you can see we have all of our menu items here, along with the menu item ID, the dish name, and the details of those dishes. Okay. Let's also take a look at our order details table. So if I do a Command-Shift-Enter again, you can see here are all my order details IDs with a unique ID for each row, and then the order IDs along with the item IDs. Okay, now our goal is to combine these 2 tables. So from menu items, you see we have this menu item ID field, and then from order details, you see we have this item ID field. And those 2 represent the same concept, which is a specific item on the menu. So to combine these 2 tables, we're going to have to join these 2 tables on this item ID. Whenever you're joining 2 tables together, you get to choose what type of join you want to use. So the most common ones are a left join or an inner join. So I'm going to start by writing out the syntax for a left join, and then I'm going to go into detail of what's actually happening. Okay, now let's combine these 2 tables. I'm going to do a select all from, and then I want to join order details with menu items. So typically when you're joining 2 tables, the first thing you want to list is your transaction table. So that's going to typically be details about everything that's happened, or in this case, every sale that's happened. And out of these 2 tables, our order details table is the one that has transaction details about every order that was made. So I'm going to start with order details, and I'm going to give this an alias or a nickname for the time being. So I'm going to call it OD for order details. Now from here, I get to choose what type of join I want to use. And in this case, when I have my transaction table, I'm going to choose a left join for now. And then I'm going to join my menu items table, which is my lookup table, because that table doesn't have information about every transaction. Instead, it has details about each menu item. So typically when you're joining tables, again, you start with the transactions table first, and then you add on the lookup information or the details. So menu items, I'm going to give it an alias of MI for menu items. And from here, I have to specify what I want to join on. So what are the fields that the 2 tables have in common? So I'm going to do OD, and then within order details, there's this item ID. So I'm going to say item ID. I just did a tab there to autocomplete. Okay, so od.item ID equals mi dot. And then within here, the matching field is this menu item ID. So if I go back to this table, you see menu item ID here. And if I run this, you'll see that my 2 tables have been joined. So here were all my order details information, and now item ID has matched with menu item ID, and now here are all my menu item details. Now in this case, I used a left join, And the reason I used a left join is because I wanted to keep all the rows in my order details table and then just add on all the details in my menu items table. If there were any item IDs here that weren't in the menu items table, it would just show up as null here. Now, the reason that I chose a left join here is because I wanted to keep all my information in my order details table. So when I do a left join, it's going to keep all the rows in my left table, and then anything that doesn't exist in the right table is going to show up as nulls. And often when you have transaction data like this, so a transaction table versus a lookup table, you would choose to do a left join to keep all your transaction data. Another popular type of join is an inner join. And if I did an inner join here, then it would only return menu item IDs that existed in both the order details and menu items table. That's another option as well if you don't want to see any null values in your output. But again, in this case, we wanted to keep all of our transactions, so we chose to go with a left join. Okay, so now with this query, we have joined both tables into a single table, and now we can answer some of the questions that we've been curious about. So I'm going to copy this, and now we can answer questions like, what were the least and most ordered items? Okay, so here is our huge table, and to find the least and most ordered items, we can take this table and we can say for each item, how many times was it ordered? Okay, so whenever I hear for each, that means I'm going to have to do a group by. So if I do group by item name, whatever I put in my group by, I have to put in my select as well. So I'm going to do item name, and I want to know how many times each item was ordered. So here I'm going to do a count of, I'm going to say order details ID to give me the rows. So I'm going to say order details ID. And then I'm going to name that as num purchases. Okay, so if I run this, then you see it tells me for each item on the menu, how many times was it purchased? And if I want to find the top one, I'm going to have to sort this. So I can sort it by order by num purchases. Now if I run all this, Command Shift Enter, you can see that the least ordered item was the chicken tacos. And then if I order this descending, then the most ordered item, Command Shift Enter, was a hamburger. So that's how I was able to find the least and most ordered items. So what's that telling me? Well, the chicken tacos aren't that popular. Maybe we should do something about that, versus the hamburger is very popular. So we should definitely keep that on our new menu. Okay, so our next question is, what categories were they in? So to find the categories of the least and most ordered items, I can actually add another field in my group by here. So if I add category here, whatever I put in my group by, I have to add into my select statement. So if I add category up here and I rerun this query, then you can see I've added in this category field along with the results of my previous query. So I see that the most ordered items happen to be American and Asian items. And then if I remove that descending here, then I see that my least ordered items seem to be Mexican food, and then seems to be a mix of different types of food, but mostly Mexican food. So with this query, I was able to answer one of my original questions, which is what menu items are doing well versus which are not doing well. And we see that some Mexican items aren't doing well, but those American and Asian items are doing really well. Now that we know that, let's move on to our next question, which is what were the top 5 orders that spent the most money? So with this previous question, we were able to find out which menu items are doing well. Now let's figure out which orders are doing well. So what customers are spending the most on? Now to do that, I'm going to take my query from up here and copy it down here. Now to find the top 5 orders that spent the most money, let's first just look at the results of this query here. Now to find the top 5 orders, we're going to have to do a group by. So in this case, I'm going to have to group by every order. And now I'm going to put that order ID in my select statement as well. And then I want to know how much money they spent. So I'm going to do a sum of price. And then I'm going to name that total spend. So if I run this here, you can see that I have for each order ID how much total money was spent. Okay, so knowing that, how do we find the top 5 orders? To do that, I'm going to have to order this total spend field. So I'm going to order by total spend, and then I want the highest ones first, so descending. And I can run this with a Command-Shift-Return, and you can see these are my highest spend orders. And if I want to see only the top 5, I can do a limit 5. And if I run this, then you can see that these are my top 5 orders that spent the most amount of money. Now this isn't giving us much info here, so let's dive into one of these specific orders. So to do that, we're going to view the details of the highest spend order. Okay, so this highest spend order has an ID of 440. So to view it, I'm going to copy this code right here. And I'm not going to need my limit or order by anymore. I don't need this group by. I'm just going to do a simple select star of these join tables right here. Okay, so from here, I only want to look at that highest spend order, which was 440. So I'm going to do where order ID equals 440. And if I run this, I see that these were all the things that order ID 440 ordered. So if I'm looking here, what did they actually order? Okay, I see many different categories here. Let's dive into that a little bit more. I want to know how much of each category that they ordered. So from here, I'm going to do a group by category. And whatever I include down here, I have to also include up here. So I'm going to do category. And then I want to know for every category, how many items did they buy in that category? So I'm going to do count of item ID as num items. And then if I run all this, I see that that highest spend order, it bought a lot of Italian items and then not so many of the rest. Okay, that's interesting because even though Italian items weren't the most popular thing on the menu, it seems like this highest spend order tends to really like Italian food. So maybe that's something we should be keeping on the menu. Now, let's not just look at this top spend order, but look at the top 5 highest spend orders. So to do that, I can run this exact same code, but for 5 different IDs. Okay, so if we go back here, I can run this code and you see these are the top 5 order IDs. So I'm going to take that and I'm just going to copy it down here so I have it for reference. Okay, so instead of where order ID equals 440, I'm going to say in, and I'm going to type in all these here. So now I'm going to run this exact same code, but for the top 5 highest spend orders. So if I run this, then you see these top 5 highest spend orders are ordering more Italian food than all the other types of food. Okay, so this has been aggregated for all 5 highest spend orders, but let's also separate this out for each specific order. So to do that, I'm going to add in another field in the group by. So I'm going to split this by order ID, and I'm going to add that order ID also within my select clause because you always have to put whatever is in the group by within the select. So now if I run this, you see, okay, for each order ID, I can see what categories they've purchased. So for this order, they seem to really like Asian food. This order likes Italian food. This order again likes Italian food. This order again, Italian food. And this order, Italian and Mexican food. Just from these top 5 orders, we've seen that these highest spend orders, they tend to be spending a lot on Italian food. So the insight that we've gathered here is that we should keep these expensive Italian dishes on our menu because people seem to be ordering them a lot, especially our highest spend customers. And that's it for our restaurant order analysis in SQL. Congrats on making it all the way through to this point, and I hope you learned a thing or two. Now from here, if you enjoyed this project, keep in mind that you can access all of our guided projects at mavenanalytics.io. Projects range from basic to advanced and feature tools like Excel, SQL, Power BI, Python, and more. You can also build personalized learning plans, assess your skills, earn credentials, and browse our entire library of self-paced analytics and data science courses as well. Hope you had fun with this project, and I hope to see you in the next one.